We're in the midst of Parsha Toldot, and we're up to the section that I think many of us don't spend that much time learning, which is the fact that Yitzchak went to a place called Gerar, and he lived there, and he had a whole interaction with the people of Gerar, and not only interaction with the people of Gerar, but specifically with the king, with King Avimelech. We've met this king before, assuming it's the same person, which it seems to be, but we should be on guard a little bit. The name of the king of Egypt is Paro, and the name of the king of Gerar is Avimelech. But it doesn't necessarily mean it was the same individual. It was the title of the place, the title of the regent. So just to consider. Now, what we have already seen previously is that there have been interactions between our forefathers and someone named Avimelech. You may recall. Rings a bell? Yes? Right. So when we think about earlier Parshiot, we had in chapter 20 was already an interaction with Avimelech, right? And in that section, we saw that it was it was typical of the interaction that Avram Avinu seemed to have to deal with foreign rulers. It was what happened in when they went to Egypt involving the Pharaoh. So now they had another tussle with another king. But it was different, and we saw that. How
many years later is this from the one where with?
Good question. Well, so let's do it like this. Sarah Imenu is 90 when Yitzchak is born. She's 127. She dies 127 years of age. So he's 37 when she dies. And then he's 37, he gets married at 40. Another 20 years elapses. Maybe 60 years, something like that, since the original. Could be more. It's at least 60 years later.
Not likely to be the same. It's more likely to be a title than the same king.
That was exactly my point, is just because you see the same name, the same way you see Avimelech. The difference is, I'll tell you the only difference, the Torah does not say Avimelech died and a new Avimelech arose. And with regard to Paro, we hear that. The different, and you can answer that, you can answer what I'm saying now by saying, yeah, that is because the storyline in Shmot needs us to know a new king arose who did not know Yosef, or the king died, and therefore the people could cry out because they said, "Oi, we're just getting another king," right? And you don't have to know that Avimelech was born or died because it's not instructive for the story. There's an Avimelech here and Avimelech there; it doesn't matter. But it's likely that Avimelech is not his personal name, but it is the title of the king. There's also, let's say, the king of Shalem is Malki Tzedek, right? So is Malki Tzedek the name of the king, or Adoni Tzedek, or are these sort of names that are given to rulers? We did this even later on in world history, right? They would append the name the Great to someone's last name, right? Or the Just, right? Why did they do that? It was a title. It was a title. Yeah, or if someone heralded from a family, so they would give them the name as the regent. It was not exactly their personal name. It was like appended or tacked on or put above their private name to show the continuity, right? So and so, king something something, queen such and such, the third, the fourth. That's what's going on. So, as was the case already in the story of Avram Avinu, we're going to see some parallels here in the story with Yitzchak. It's not going to be identical, but there are going to be certain resonances of things that have happened before that are happening again. So again, on chapter 26 in Parsha Toldot, and recall that there's a famine in the land, and Yitzchak Avinu starts making a move towards Egypt to follow in his father's footsteps. That's the beginning of chapter 26. It actually tells us the beginning of chapter 26 in verse 1, Pasuk Aleph, there's a famine. This is separate from the famine that was in the days of Abram, meaning it's not a continuity, it's a separate famine. And Yitzchak goes to Avimelech, Melech Plishtim Gerar. Where's that in Gerar? It's on the way out of the country, and he's going down to Egypt. How do we know that? Because the next pasuk, Hashem tells him, don't go down to Egypt. I know you're going there, but rather live in this place where I will tell you, Gur ba'aretz hazot, live in this place, right? I'll be with you, etc. And that the promise that he gets on account of the fact that Avram kept my chukim, my mitzvot, chukim, and torot. So that's the bracha that he gets. Everything is good, and he stays, Vayeshev Yitzchak b'Gerar. He dwells in Gerar. We're getting a flavor for what's going on in Eretz Canaan and the surrounding environs just by the next pasuk. Vayishalu anshe hamakom liishto. They're asking already about the wife. Vayomer achotihi, and she says, "I am, I am his sister, right? Or she is my sister, rather, right? She's my sister, right? That's what he says about her, right? So, okay." So why it tells us why. Ki yarei lemor ishti penya harguni anshe hamakom al Rivka ki tovat marehi. We learn again about the beauty of Rivka imenu. We learned that the people are going to try to not only take her but kill Yitzchak. This was a common occurrence. It was a nuisance when there was a woman in this culture that the townspeople who lack any semblance of morality. It was a law of the jungle that killed the husband. There was an accident. Now the woman is available, right? But if he says he's the brother, he's the protector of the family, and he's the one who's in charge, so to speak, of her matrimony, and therefore, they can figure out shidduchim that way. What's astounding, I'll take your question 1 minute, Shelley, is, this happened before. This actually happened more than once. First of all, he took from the playbook of Avram Avinu from Parshat Lech Lecha right at the beginning in chapter 12. When he goes down to Egypt, and and he tells Sarah, when they ask you, say you're my sister, but then the plan doesn't work because the Egyptian, whoever it is, they see her and Paro ends up taking her. But in chapter 20, it actually does say that Vayomer Avraham el Sarah Ishto. This is chapter 20, pasuk bet. He's living in Gerar, and he says to Sarah Ishto, Achotihi. This is my sister. It's like, oh, not again. So now, why did Yitzchak do exactly the same thing? You'll say to me, well, yes, but don't you remember what happened the last go around? Vayover Elokim El Avimelech Bachalom Laila. God came to Avimelech in a dream at night, and he said to him, you're going to die about this woman that you took because she's married. What? Righteous indignation. Avimelech Karavi, they didn't go near Vayomar, right? Hashem agoygam tzedek taro. You're going to kill the righteous with the guilty, meaning he told me this is my sister, right? And since I'm the king, I don't have to pay him off, and I don't have to. There's to be a dowry or anything like that. And she also said I'm his sister. So I'm guiltless. My hands are clean when I did this. And why am I being held accountable? It was on false assumptions that were given to me. And what happens here? Unbelievable. Again, he's telling everybody, oh, this is my sister. They seem to believe him. Vayihiki archulo sham hayamim. He spent many years there. Vayashkev Avimelech melech plishtim be'ad hachalon. Vayar v'hinei Yitzchak mitzachek et Rivka ishto. Euphemistic language, according to Rashi. There's intimacy between Yitzchak and Rivka. Somehow, you ask, well, why is Avimelech melech plishtim looking through the window? That's a bit of a question, right? So how great is the morality over there? But he sees it through the window. Vayashkeit usually means looking from up to down. Presumably the king here also, if they had that technology, I just don't know. I don't know the answer. They had higher buildings. From the height, he can look down at all the other buildings in the place he sort of see in. I don't know, but it's a question. Anyway, and he sees this, and again, the same righteous indignation. Why did you lie to me? Yitzchak admits, I was going to get killed, so I didn't want to say. It was on pain of death, so I hid it away. Right? And Vayomer Avimelech, Mazor asita lanu. What did you do to us? Kimat shachav achad ha'am at ishtecha veheveta alanu asham. Almost happened that someone in the community would have taken your wife, and then that would have been guilt upon us. there is some kind of morality that they have, right? At least Avimelech does have some morality, whether it's the same person or not. In the original episode, he's saying to Hashem, I didn't know that she's married. How am I supposed to know? And he told me she's the sister, and she said she's the brother. He said, I'm her brother, and she said, I'm his sister. I didn't know they're married. Now it turns out that, right? So that was episode 1 with Avimelech. Now round 2 with Avimelech, what do we have? Someone who almost was married her, so to speak. But you see there's a little bit of morality and immorality as well, because there's an idea like, well, had she been available, we still weren't going to actually have a marriage with a dowry and something like that, something formal, but someone achad ha'am, just a person from the nation, could have taken her. Yeah, so there's something there. Shelley, I'm sorry I keep you waiting so long. Go ahead, and then I'm going to take Karen's comment after that. Shelley, go, please.
Two things. One is I'm so tired of, I know that there are midrashim that say that after the flood, that people did not commit some of these moral sins that they had before. So the idea, we're going back to taking stuff like the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, that everybody's immoral down there. Maybe you want to say Egypt is the exception, but everybody's immoral. I'm so tired of it. It's like, nobody who's not Jewish can't, or the Ovo can't be good. And the second thing is my question, which I think we have to look into, is Mida Keneged Mida. Yitzchak tries to deceive Avimelech, who in this case, because of what happens, God seems to be saying that he didn't do anything wrong, okay? Yitzchak is going to be deceived very, very badly at the end. Is there a cause and effect?
That's a great point. I can't even address that second point right now because we're not up to that story, but bookmark that when we get to the story of the brachot. I'd never thought of that before. That's great. On the first point, I don't think the point is that after the flood, there was no immorality. The point is that it was not as rampant in society, and there was perhaps some kind of a countervailing pressure of some kind of a morality that did exist. It's still not the morality of the Torah necessarily. It doesn't mean that there aren't people who don't have a moral compass that has goodness within it. Vide, Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, particularly Mamre, among the 3 of them, who are Bale Brit Avraham. Witness the fact that we do say that Avram Avinu is bringing about a monotheistic ideal, some would say an ethical monotheistic ideal to the world. The fact that Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem is in fact a tzaddik, right? He seems to be, even if you don't say he's shame, he seems to be a righteous person. But further, as tiring as it might be, the reality is that in antiquity, they didn't call it immorality, they called it a different morality, right? What is the Hammurabi Code, if not a moral code of the time and the place? It is a form of a morality, to take an example, to say that if you run a construction company, you're a builder, and by accident, when you built something, you dropped a brick off of a height and it killed one of the workers' sons. There is a form of morality to say that now we should come to your house and see if you have a son. And if you do, have that worker go on a height and drop the same large brick on your child to get rid of your child. There's a morality to it. In other words, there's a certain code. That is their code, by the way. A soul for a soul means like you find someone else, just kind of even the score.
Yes, but
it's not our morality. It's not. It's a twist. It's not our morality. That's not how it works.
But it's better than what happened before, which would have been that you would have just
right.
gone out and killed everybody.
Right. So that's why it's not leading to world destruction. It's not the world's not devolving into chaos. But there still is a long educational process. And by the by, someone has music in the background or something. You just mute yourself. I'm muting you. Okay, you'll talk when you want to talk, so I can hear the voice in the background. Think about the development of different forms of morality, about different things that happened in world history, even by so-called monotheistic religions, some of whom are still in a more, I don't know what to say, in a more wild state of what they consider to be morality than others. which by
Yeah,
our
but
lights
I'm
would say is
lining-
abhorrent. I do have to say the
I'm
words
lining
honor
up
killing.
too.
You've heard of honor killings?
Yes,
They're happening in 2022. Over 1 billion people who are adherents, actually, well over 1 billion, almost 2 billion people who are adherents to a faith that believes in honor killings as a matter of principle. Say to me, well, we also have things here and there. Yes, but are they operative? Are they not? What's happened in the intervening period, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, there is some form of morality here, and you see it. And that was my point, is that Avimelech is saying to Yitzchak, I mean, come on, why didn't you level with us? I mean, someone almost did something that is unacceptable to us, which is adultery. And Yitzchak's response is, well, because I kind of know how it works here. Adultery is not good, but if you knock off the guy by an accident, in quotation marks, what can you do? There was an accident. She's available now. So I said, it's my sister to protect my life. And thinking, which was how it worked in antiquity, apparently, that was Avram Avinu's plan also in Breisheet. It didn't work. He was going to play one suitor off the other to get in and get out. And right. So Shelley, you have your hand up still, or is that from before?
no, I'm joining.
Oh, that's Helen. Hi, Helen.
Okay, Goel Hadam in our parsha this week. Now we are advocating, according to the Pshat, we are still, according to the Pshat, advocating. The footnote says we give this family member extra legal certification to murder the one who murdered his relative. Now, in today's theocracy, how would that work?
Right. So I don't know that we're necessarily angling toward a theocracy as an ideal. When Mashiach Tzidkenu will arrive, W. Sanhedrin will figure that out. I will point out, though, that what we read in the Torah about that is two things. One, much more of an emphasis on the person who has caused the death needs to be sequestered from society for their own safety. It doesn't seem it's like an invitation to the family. You should go and get this person. It's kind of like they're going to be in a murderous rage, and what will give them some kind of a feeling that there was some redress for their loss because they have it in for that person. Now it wasn't really an accident or this, that. I don't care what they say. Yeah, let them go live in a safe space. That's actually what it is. Go live in one of the.
That's not what the Pshat says. Pshat says one person is willfully, with malice aforethought, to kill somebody, and then the relative has the extra legal capacity to be the executioner.
Right. So we generally do not hold that we take that shot literally any more than an eye for an eye is literal. Meaning the Goel Hadam is dafka when there is something. The paradox of it is, which it's not a subject for today, so I don't want to spend too much more time on it. When it is something that is shown to be willful, etc., davka there, the Ari Miklat don't work. Davka there needs to be a judicial process. If there can be, that will actually permit the trial to take its course. Right. And of course, as you know, we've had this conversation before, right? There is something called capital punishment in Judaism on an official level. I was going to say on a theoretical level. It's not a theoretical. It could be, possibly something that was enacted. But the Gemara itself is saying like, well, if it was once in 70 years, that would be like a big deal if that actually happened. It's like, so what do you have a law in the books that doesn't actually become operative? Yeah, because people were kind of reticent to start taking lives. How is that really going to play? But at least to drive the point home, you took a life, your life is forfeit. The Hammurabi Code, by the way, was transferring just to find someone else in your family or to buy your way out of it in some cases. So it's not the same thing. Look, there's a far-reaching discussion. I want to take Karen's point. Helen, your point's well taken. It's a whole big discussion that I want to go into about Ari Miklat and Shogeg and Mazid, etc. But all to say, they're also like, you don't see that happening today. There's a reason for it why it's not happening today. There's been a certain
well, sure. Lo sirtzach Lo si kom, lo si tor.
Exactly. So if we were having a shiur about the subject of Are Miklat, I'd have to explain to you in detail how could it be that it says don't bear a grudge, don't take revenge, but it says in the Torah that they can avenge the blood of their loved one. Revenge, avenge. What's the difference? Why is one permitted, one not? How come if the guy, if it was a mistake, he has to go live in Golus, but if it was on purpose, where does he live exactly? He goes home, everything's fine. They're going to come after him, right? They're talking about the Nefesh B'Tseah. We don't allow a payoff. He's going to have to die. We don't allow the person to run to the Ir Miklat, right? They're going to have to, it pollutes the land. Don't they contaminate it. So how come all that? But the point is there's a judicial process. It's still not the Goel Hadam.
Adam.
The issue of the Goel Hadam has to do with the person who has killed accidentally. That it was Veloma Vakesh Ra'ato. He did not seek his malice. If it was malice aforethought, Dafka, he can't go to the on the level of Pshat. He cannot go to the city of yeah. Now Karen had asked a good question. Karen had asked a great question, which is, how did it happen that the king is looking through the window? Like, what? I mean, why didn't he close the shades? I mean, how did he figured that out? Chizkuni was sensitive to this question, and Chizkuni says vayashkef be'ad hachalon means that in the olden days the window, right, was not like it wasn't like sliding up and down. It was actually an object that went into the window and came out of the window. Also, it wasn't cloth; it was part of the wall, pretty much. You would take it in, take it out. All different Shabbos shilas about opening and closing the window. So he saw that it was closed. And he realized the fact that it was closed. Ba'ad hachalom, he says, Yesh mefarshim, lo shayachon patuach el na'ul. It wasn't open, it was locked. Umitoch shehaya na'ul, hevin avimelech ha'ma'aseh. From the fact that it was closed, he understood what was going on. She came to Bayit Afel, mutal shemesh v'afilu b'yom, because if it's a darkened room, it would have been permissible for them to be during the day, says the Chizkuni. So, okay, he explains why it would have been permissible. What did he see? So he saw Yitzchak mitzachek et Rivka ishto, according to Chizkuni. That's not a euphemism for their intimacy. It means literally he saw that they were joking around, i.e., before they were intimate, and then he saw that he closed the window. Oh, okay. So in other words, he surmised it. Is that actually the pure pshat that we see here? Not 100% sure. And maybe we're left with the question a little bit better than the answer. That is the Chizkuni's answer, which probably because he had Karen's question. I'm just saying, it's probably what happened. Karen, please go ahead. Please.
Okay, I'm sure it has not missed anyone here about all of this stuff with men wanting other people's wives and wondering if they can kill in order to get it, and your other class of malachim and how it ties in with who in malachim. This is just a pattern through Tanakh.
Great point. Yes.
Pattern through Tanakh, and we don't learn from it. When you want something, you want it.
Well, we oftentimes as humanity, even as Jews, as part of humanity, we do not learn it, but oftentimes we do. Meaning
we do, yes.
Meaning the cases that come up that are, I don't say sensationalist, but the ones that are the big stories, as we were learning recently in Sefer Malachim over the last weeks. Yeah. That's and there's censure for it. And what we learned in Shmuel Bet also, it's also in that of a kind with the same thing. And that's what we're seeing here, right? And we're also seeing, by the by, is Yitzchak is not willing to go along to get along. Rivka is not forfeit, etc. We'll see other stories of this later on in the book as well, obviously involving Dinah and the like. So, and that is what's on display here. By the by, let's say we take Chizkuni, even if we take Chizkuni at face value, I mean, it's quite something that, what's the word? A few things that are going on here that are dynamic. One, there's a famine. So people are suffering. Two, the they lived there for a while. Pasuk Chet is Vayiki Orchu Lo Sham Hayamim. They had lived there for a while. How long? Not clear, but not 10 minutes. Then at some point, Avimelech sort of figured it out. Be'ad achalon doesn't mean he looked through the window, but on account of the window. That's how Chizkun is reading it. Be'ad achalon, right? Be'ad amenu uve'ad arei Elokeinu does not mean through our nation and through the cities of our God. It means on account of, for the sake of. Be'ad hachalon. But then it does say he saw that Yitzchak was mitzachek ate Rivka ishto. Could be a euphemism, might not be. But just the consideration that Yitzchak and Rivka, for whom we have very little dialogue between them, which we learned previously about the Nitziv and others, and I think Shelley made this point, and I think maybe others did as well. There was a certain distance between Yitzchak and Rivka, the age gap, and the reality of their interaction, that there were missed signals, etc. We'll see that story coming up. And we saw already Rivka loves this one, Yitzchak loves this one, Rivka loves that one. What does that mean? There's something here about, in this pasuk, saying that, yeah, nonetheless, through it all, they still were a couple, and they still did live as a couple. There's something there also a little bit to tell us about that. And also that so much of the world of Yitzchak is inward, hidden, concealed from us. And yet we know this, we know that there was an inner life that he had, and he shared it with Rivka after the birth of Yaakov and Esav. That was just for procreative purposes, but the fact that this is Chaye Ishut. Shelley asked, where were Yaakov and Esav during the Gerar episode? And the answer is, we don't know. They're there, but they're not front and center in the story. And it is a bit of a question. How come there's the story of the birth of Yaakov and Esav, the story of the selling of the firstborn with the soup, that whole episode, then that there's a famine, then the story of Avimelech, and then somewhere later on, the story about the selling, about the bracha with the food.
If they're young, if they're young and they go into Gerar with their parents, we're never sure what the chronology of stuff is. It's usually chronological, but not always. So if it is usually chronological, they could have gone with them, and that could be how Avimelech figured it out. Hey, wait a minute, these two seem to be the kids of these two, so therefore they have to be married. I mean, it is an interesting question. Where are the two of them? Where are the future generations?
Yes, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. And I don't know. I mean, the pasuk Chet, where it says they were there for many days. See that? They lived there for many days. So it implies a lengthy period of time, but I don't think that that it means that it's before the children were born. I think it's after the children were born. They're just kind of in the background. They're not part of the story at this moment. By the length of days, according to Rashi, is since many days passed and they were living this fiction that they were brother and sister, which, by the way, they had to explain then, who are these children who are calling them, dad and mom? So who are these kids? Were they sworn to secrecy? Was that part of it? And it was one of their children and not of the other. This is interesting. Did they have a subterfuge where they said, Yitzchak said, "Oh, this is my son. His name is Esav," and Rivka said, "This is my son. His name is Yaakov. I was married, but now I'm not anymore. But I'm brother and sister, or brother and sister." Rashi just says after a long period of time of living there, he saw that since Rivka was not assaulted or anything like that, God forbid. So I took it from the Medrash. He said he didn't have to be so careful anymore to pretend to live this cover story that they're brother and sister. But the people figured it out.
There's
said,
one
well, what's going on here?
Another question I have to ask. The idea of a famine. Famine, when we are in Eretz Yisrael and we own it after we come back into the country after Egypt, famine means that we did something wrong. Does famine mean that something was done wrong in this case?
The Torah does not say.
Okay.
It does not say. It's not clear if famine, if you can draw a line in general between famine and in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, in the world, no, but in Eretz Yisrael, it's not clear if you can draw a line between a famine and something causal that's sinful before the Jewish people get there as a people. That's when they're told, okay, if you listen, good, and if not, then there'll be a famine. Certainly, it is an article of faith that the weather patterns in Eretz Yisrael, not at a time of galut, but at a time of connection to Hashem, Nevi'im, etc. Certainly, it's a barometer of what's going on in terms of a relationship with Hashem. It's the barometer of the spirituality is the presence or absence of rain in Eretz Yisrael, Davka in Eretz Yisrael. We don't really know. But the point that Avimelech, obviously, by the by, part of Avimelech's upset seems to be, how did you say she's your sister, right? He does not take into account the possibility of incest. Avimelech, right? Now, why not? Because there's a certain morality there. Not every culture had that morality, right? There's an essay I saw a few years ago. I don't remember what journal it's in, that talked all about how in the Egyptian royal family, there was a lot of incest because they wanted to keep the family bloodline. Actual incest, like insane things. Now that's a foregone conclusion for Avimelech. Like, that can't be happening. It must be that they're married. That's his next assumption, right? Vayikra Avimelech li'Yitzchak v'yomer, Achine ishtecha hi. Behold, she's really your wife. Ve'chamarta achoti hi. How did you say she's your sister? V'yomer elav Yitzchak ki amarti penamut alea. I was worried I was going to die. V'yomer Avimelech ma zod asita lanu. Kim'at shachav achad amet ishtecha ve'veita aleinu Hashem. You would have brought guilt upon us. Guilt from who? So Avimelech, the previous Avimelech, again, could be the same Avimelech, may not be, not clear, did have an encounter with Hashem, B'Shem Elokim, right? The idea that they had other gods and were also idolaters is likely, right? Syncretic worship was how it worked in antiquity, for sure, in classical period as well. Right, so Vayitzav Avimelech et kol ha'am lemor hanogea b'ish hazeh u'vishto mot yumat. So now it's a national decree. No one may go after this man or his wife, meaning no one's going to pull a fast one and kill this man. Now, is it Avimelech who has flashbacks of what happened with this man's father when God came to him and said, "Don't touch her or you will die"? Or is it just part of their morality that he realized, and maybe there's something here that the place of Gerar learns from this about, we need to have protections. It's interesting, though, it's not about everybody, mind you. It's only about him, right? Worthy of consideration. And then we learn about Yitzchak being very successful. Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz ahi, vayimtza b'shana ahi mea she'arim, vayevarcheu Hashem. So this is a big deal in a time of a famine. Famine means the produce of the land is not giving its general yield. It's working at auxiliary power. Oh, okay, no, actually, it was 100-fold. What he planted was 100-fold, right, at that particular time. So in that land, in that place, which Rashi points out, according to Rashi, it's not considered. Rashi says something that's strange and almost contradictory. Rashi says, well, it's not really Eretz Yisrael, even though it's not Eretz Yisrael, it's Gerar. Nonetheless, it's not part of the 7 nations of Canaan. Nonetheless, this came about. So right away, I have the footnote from the Maharal. Well, of course, it's part of Eretz Yisrael because Hashem forbade Yitzchak from leaving Eretz Yisrael. It is Eretz Yisrael, but nonetheless, it's not the main part of Eretz Yisrael. It's not the part of Eretz Yisrael that's of the 7 nations. It's not Eretz Yisrael Atzma. It has another name. It's not part of the Shivat Amamim, the 7 nations, but it's also part of Eretz Yisrael, which is somewhat curious. But it sounds, if I could put this together, Ba'aretz Ahi means in that land which on one level is Eretz Yisrael, but yet it doesn't have the total status of Eretz Yisrael. It's an expansionist territory that, from the perspective of, on one level, is Eretz Yisrael, Shchon Ba'aretz Hazot. It has the Kedusha, but it's not entirely the same part of Eretz Yisrael as where the 7 nations live. I'll be speaking about this a little more this coming Shabbat in Shul in a bit of a different context, God willing, about the expansive borders. Shelley, sorry, do you hand up? And I know we got to stop in about 2 minutes.
Border business between what God promises Abraham, and there's going to be different promises by God to different people of what the borders of Eretz Israel are, and some of them, what comes true, might have to do with our behavior as opposed to what God promised, and so we don't get the biggest promise, even in the greatest time of Yehoshua and stuff.
Very
like
likely
that.
to come up this Shabbos, Parsha Dvarim.
Okay.
Discussion. But it's along those lines, right? So, but you see that Yitzchak, he's a little farther south, maybe of the actual territory of the 7 nations, and yet where he goes, Shchon Ba'aretz, Asher Omar Elecha, Gur Ba'aretz Hazot, V'yayimcha, means in this land, still has some kind of ma'amad of status of being Eretz Yisrael. Phil, you had your hand up? I'm sorry. Did I make that up? I made that up. Oh, I didn't. You didn't have your hand up. I made that up. Okay.
I'm so sorry to be so invasive today, but
Not at all.
Okay.
I love your comments and
Okay.
questions.
okay. The Chalon is a very popular vehicle in our stories. Rochov has a red string. Daniel is caught by his other court people by looking out the window. And so it has been a vehicle for noticing things that are unusual. So, and then another thing, this parsha tells us in regard to our next Thursday thing, that all of the land is capable of holiness. There's a pasuk in there that says it's the whole land, not only Yerushalayim. So if somebody does some prayer in Dan, this parsha says that's okay. So
You're mixing me up. You're mixing me up, Helen. This is already, we're up to Thursday. Come back Thursday. We'll talk about it more in depth. No, I like what you're saying, but yeah, you're right. The window is a vehicle for these things. And you're right that there's something about, about the land being connected, all of it. It's the place of, that Eini Hashem Elokecha ba tamid, Hashem is always doresh, his eyes are always upon it, etc. For sure. I'll just close by saying today that when it says that he found on that time 100-fold, the reason why it gives you the number, according to Chazal, is to tell us that this was the first time that anyone gave a tithe as a mitzvah. In other words, that he basically tithed what he had. Me'ah sha'arim means he gave from the 100-fold, means that he was assessing how much there is. And Rabbeinu say, Omed zeh l'masud haya, he actually did this count in order to be able to take 10% to give back, if you will, to the impoverished, etc., to give as a tithe. By the way, the Rambam does hold this way as well, and he says as much in the Mishnah Torah in terms of the count of the mitzvot, that Yitzchak Avinu is the first one involving Masrot. Anyway, we're totally out of time, and I do want to give, because there's another speaker starting at in 120 seconds here in the shul, so I don't want to go into his time. Lovely to see everybody. We'll see you Thursday morning, God willing, in health and happiness. And next Monday, we will have a shiur. Then we will be on hiatus after that for a couple of weeks.